Now the stretch. And the pitch. Swing and a base hit to left center field. Incavilia's going to score. This game is over. On an RBI hit by Minchie Poo. The Phils have won it 6-5 and 10 on the Wild Things RBI hit.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today we are going to be talking about the independent Washington Wild Things who play in Washington, Pennsylvania. Later on in this episode, I'm going to have Pittsburgh-based artist Dino Guarino, who created the logo for those Wild Things all those years ago. We'll have Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett, on to try to figure out just what kind of animal is this Washington Wild Thing. And, of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am so pleased to welcome to Baseball by Design Christine Blaine, who is the longest tenured employee with the Washington Wild Things. She is the CEO of Sports Facility LLC, which is the parent company for the Wild Things. Christine, hello. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I am doing very well because I get to be here talking about this fun brand, this fun team that has been around for more than 2 decades. You have been involved with the team since the get-go. Like I said, you're the longest tenured employee. You were involved with the naming of the team. You had a hand in the conversations around the branding of the team. So I want to start from the ground floor here. Why is this team called the Washington Wild Things? They're in Washington, Pennsylvania. What does Wild Things mean to the community of Washington, Pennsylvania?
Well, there's kind of a long and involved story involved with that. The ballpark was built by a nonprofit organization, and they didn't know what team they were going to have come in. They had actually looked to bring in a Pirate affiliate, and that did not come to fruition. That ended up being something that was impossible to do. And obviously, a Pirate affiliate is the only one that we could bring in because of our proximity to Pittsburgh. You know, the Pirates could have nixed us bringing anybody else in. So they had conversations with the Frontier League and decided that if we didn't get the affiliated team, they were our backup plan. And the folks from the Frontier League were fabulous. And they worked with us, and they promised us that even if a team was not available to buy, they would expand the league if we wanted to come in. As it ended up, we purchased the team, and I say we very loosely. I had no money in this. When it came to be, we ended up buying a team from Canton, Ohio, and they were the Canton Crocodiles. And what happened is we bought that team and brought them here and obviously renamed them. But then the people from Canton were so angry that their team had left.
Oh.
They bought another team in the league, and I think they were the Canton Coyotes. I think we had bought the Crocodiles, and then they bought a team and they called them the Coyotes. And I believe we played them the first year, which was kind of amusing. But so we decided that we were going to have this team, and the nonprofit had done contests in elementary schools and all that kind of stuff. And the name that came up was the Washington Generals. And the ownership team that was actually buying the team did not want to call them the Washington Generals. And so we got together with an agency and several of the owners, and for days, we went over this. It was fascinating. We wanted to be loyal to the folks from Washington, Pennsylvania, because they had supported this whole project. But we also know that we're sitting on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. And so we toyed with, should we name it a Pittsburgh team so that we get coverage, from the Pittsburgh media? It was just a back and forth and back and forth. And we decided that our loyalty to Washington, Pennsylvania was the most important thing. And so then it came down to, well, what's Washington known for? Well, there were all different iterations of that and what it would be. And we just kept going back and forth with names. They were talking about covered bridges are big in this community. And so they had talked about the bridge cats. And it was like, well, that's stupid. What is a bridge cat? And then we decided we really liked the alliteration. So we wanted it to be a WW. And we kept coming back to that movie, Major League. It
Oh,
just kept coming back. We would get away from it and then we would come back to it. We would get away from it and then we would come back to it. And it ended up that that's where we landed, that we thought that would be a really cool name. And it worked because back then in the Frontier League, every team's mascot or name had to have something to do with the frontier. You know, there were the paints. And when we were doing this, I thought paints. Well, it was the horse, the paints. You know, so all of the teams had something to do with the frontier, and Wild Things kind of fit into that. Although I don't know that you saw Wild Things in the frontier, but kind of you did. So it just ended up working out really well.
the fact that it was Major League and, the Wild Thing who inspired the nickname. I was trying to guess. I was researching beforehand, right? And so I saw that the team was the Canton Crocodiles from 1997 to 2001, and then the Washington Wild Things debuted in 2002. And the movie Wild Things with Kevin Bacon and Nev Campbell was out in 1998. So I wasn't sure maybe if that was still part of like the zeitgeist. And then there is Where the Wild Things Are,
Yeah, yeah,
as by Maurice Sendak. And so I was wondering
right.
if maybe it had something to do with that.
It
That's
didn't. It was 100% the movie.
So not Nev Campbell, not Maurice Sendak. It was definitely the Wild Thing in Major League. That makes sense.
Yep, 100%.
Do you have to fight with people who are, see your logo, who are not familiar with the geography of the Frontier League, who think that you're in Washington State?
Every once in a while, we'll get like a letter looking for a pocket schedule or something, and there's something in the letter that leads us to believe that they're talking about the state of Washington, but no,
Okay.
that's really not an issue. There are fewer than a handful of those that I can remember over the last 23 years.
You said that Washington Generals was a possibility, and my association with Washington Generals is the team whose job it was to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters in basketball. And I'm wondering if that was part of that conversation.
I think that's one of the reasons why we didn't want to use that name. And we also the owners that were a part of this in the beginning, and there was a group of owners, they wanted it to be something really cool that you could market. And
Hmm.
I think Wild Things had a little bit, it was a little sexier, if you will. It was something that you could market more easily and make it more fun than the Washington Generals. But yes, that team came up, and certainly we didn't want to associate ourselves with being losers.
I also, when I think of Wild Thing in Major League, obviously that's the character Ricky Vaughn. But as a Phillies fan, a Philadelphia Phillies fan, I think of the Wild Thing being Mitch Williams, who famously gave up the game-winning home run to Joe Carter in the 1993 World Series. So that's I have that association with Wild Things as well. Ricky Vaughn, the turning point in that movie was, for him as a character anyway, was he put on glasses and then it
Yeah.
allowed him suddenly to see home plate so that he could, pitch better and actually throw strikes. The character in your logo is wearing sunglasses. Is that an homage to Ricky Vaughn? Are those Ricky Vaughn glasses that he's wearing?
They kind of are, only they are sunglasses, but yeah, yeah. And it's very interesting that when we opened our home opener, which was on May 29th of 2002,
Hmm.
and we had ceremony on the field obviously prior to, and our general manager wore the Ricky Vaughn jacket and the sunglasses and the whole thing. He was decked out to he didn't look anything like Charlie Sheen, but he was decked out to have that look. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that everything about it was about that movie, yes, including the glasses.
Including
So
the glasses.
yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. The logo is a red slab serif W and an animal, as we said, wearing these sunglasses. He's wearing a two-tone cap. It's got the sort of maroon brim and the black top with a W on it. What is the animal? What animal are we looking at here?
That's Wild Thing.
That's Wild Thing. Is he a specific animal? Is he looks a little bit like a mountain lion? No, you're shaking his head. No, he is a generic animal.
He's a generic animal, and a lot of people will say, well, what kind of an animal is he? And the answer is he's a wild thing. It's funny. One owner refers to him as a dog. And
Oh,
I don't think he looks like a dog at all, but he would say, the dog, get the dog. And then a lot of people here think he looks like a cat. And so when we talk about the different variations of the logo, there's one that's cat head with W, because there are all the different variations of him. But he's not a cat, he's not a dog, he's not a bear, he's a wild thing. And there's a whole story about him that he was born in the swamps of the Mississippi
oh,
and made his way somehow up to the state of Pennsylvania. And when he got here, he found this land. And when they started construction on the ballpark, the construction workers kept thinking that they saw something, but they could never actually, identify or whatever. They kept seeing flashes of something. And one morning they came in very early and they found this creature lying in the dugout, sleeping. And that was when the Wild Thing decided that he wanted to be a part of this organization. He would be the greatest fan, and its favorite foods, of course, are Cracker Jacks and hot dogs and peanuts and that kind of thing. And so there's this whole story about how he came to be here and became the greatest fan.
and is there a 3D version? Is there a mascot Wild Thing who wanders the ballpark?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. He's very popular in the community. We actually had to get a car to take him to all the places that where people want to see him. He's actually, this is Read Across America week. He's in schools all week long. He's not allowed to read though because he doesn't talk,
Mm.
but he likes to go and see the kids and be involved. He's in parades. He's going to be in the St. Patrick's Day parade. He's very, very active.
This team, as we said earlier, this team debuted in 2002 after moving
Mhm.
from Canton, Ohio. You said that you were involved in the conversations around the artwork, but you didn't actually create the artwork yourself. Do you recall who did create the artwork?
Yeah, and again, that's a little complicated. As I said, we were working with an agency,
Hmm.
and they created some versions of this that the one owner in particular said, "My child would be scared to death of that. It looks like it could eat him." And so we said, "Okay, you've given us enough," and we turned it over to an artist that was good friends with most of the people in our ownership group. His name is Dino Guarino. And Dino is a local artist in the Pittsburgh area. He does all kinds of sports paintings. He has paintings of Penguins, Pirates, Steelers. He's he just wonderful artwork of athletes, and he also does a lot of work in churches. He's done murals in churches and that kind of very, very talented man. He's the one that did the design and the paintings and an exquisite job. You can't replicate what he did.
And you haven't tried to replicate what he did, 23 years ago in the landscape of minor league baseball logos. That's an eternity for a team to have the same brand unchanged. Speaks to the longevity of this brand that Mr. Guarino came up with. Has there ever been conversation about updating the brand or making a change, or the change seems to be the only constant in minor league baseball these days? Any conversations in that direction?
There have been many conversations about it, and we did some things probably by year 10 where we were trying to not change the name or whatever, but we were trying to change the look and some of the colors. Our colors are red, black, white, and the tertiary color is periwinkle. And so we decided, well, we're going to get away from periwinkle. We're going to make that blue. And then we went with a blue pinstripe uniform and so on. And they did a mascot costume that quite frankly was hideous in
Oh
my
no.
opinion. It looked like he had dreadlocks. It was really ugly. And we had him for a couple of years and we tried to do the blue. And that really wasn't a rebrand as much as it was. This maybe would move some more merchandise if we
Mm.
made some changes. But that didn't last long. And so then we've gone back to the traditional and we have really stayed with those colors and the art that we have. We have a lot of young people who work here who periodically say, let's change this. Let's
Mhm.
change this. And there are a couple of us who have been here for a number of years and say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Um, Frankly, I don't think it is broken. I think like that we had one kid that came in and he wanted to make Wild Things sleeker and more muscular and that kind of thing. That's not who he is. He's big and lovable and huggable, and he's chubby, and that's the beauty of him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um, sure, after I leave here, they may go ahead and make some changes to it, but I think he's perfect just the way he is, and I think the logos are perfect.
Well, and a lot of teams will work around that by doing alternate identities. Based on my research, I didn't see that you all have any of the, like the food-based things, like you haven't been like the pierogies for a weekend or anything like that. So you are steady Eddie when it comes to, the Wild Things brand and really reinforcing that brand equity that you've built up all these years.
Yeah, we added a mascot. This was years ago. It was probably in 2007 or 2008 when our naming rights partner was Consol Energy, which is a coal mining company. They're no longer in existence, but
Hmm.
we created another mascot that joined Wild Thing at the games, and his name was Minor League. And he was a coal miner, spelled differently, but he was a coal miner. Um, and he would be there and that, but you know what? That didn't fly either. I think when the Wild Thing's there, he kind of steals the show.
So the one last thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's funny that you see minor league teams sell this sort of same version of this one T-shirt that says what is it? It's like beer, baseball, something, beer, hot
Yep.
dogs, baseball, or
Yep.
whatever. You all have one that is milk, cookies, baseball, which is the most wholesome thing ever. Milk, cookies, and baseball. How come milk, cookies, baseball instead of beer, hot dogs, baseball?
If you ever come to a Wild Things game, you'll see that our most popular promotion, and it has been for 23 years, is that we sell milk and cookies for $1. It normally happens at, like, if the game starts at 7:05, we do it at 8:30. And we are out in the concourse and we buy cartons of milk and we have home baked cookies that come right out of our kitchen warm. And people will line up. We'll sell 500 of them a night.
Yeah.
People line up and they come and get them. And when we first started this, I remember thinking, who in their right mind wants to have milk and cookies when it's 90 degrees out? But they do. And it has become kind of our signature. And last year we decided we were going to make a t-shirt with it.
Yeah.
So that's why we're milk cookies and baseball. And it's very apple pie. It's what America's all about.
It is super wholesome. I love it so much. That may be the item. This hobby of mine, this podcast, has cost me a lot of money because every time I research a team, I just want to buy all of the merchandise. And so that milk cookies baseball might need to be my T-shirt here. Um, Christine, thank you so much. This has really been a lot of fun to talk about this brand. It's a fun brand to learn more about. I love learning that the animal is not a specific animal. He's just a wild thing. So this is going to take some exploration here. Where can people find the team? Where can people go buy themselves a Milk Cookies baseball T-shirt?
You can go to www.washingtonwildthings.com.
It's all right there. Christine, thank you so much. Best of luck with the upcoming season, and I hope to catch a game in Washington, Pennsylvania soon.
Please let me know if you're coming, and thank you.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so pleased to have on the phone right now, live from Pittsburgh, Dino Guarino. You heard us talking about him on the previous segment. Dino Guarino of Dino Guarino Studios created the logo for these Washington Wild Things. Dino, good morning. How are you doing?
Good, Paul. How are you?
I am doing very well. It is a beautiful sunny morning here in Fort Collins, Colorado. You are in the Pittsburgh area.
It's a beautiful sunny morning here in Pittsburgh, PA as well.
Pittsburgh is a beautiful city. You certainly have been blessed with an awful lot of sports success, and man, where the Pittsburgh Pirates play, the baseball stadium where the Pittsburgh Pirates play, is just one of the most beautiful ballparks in all of Major League Baseball.
It is a beautiful city, and we were fortunate to have, for being a small town, Pittsburgh is really not a huge town, but if you add up all the championships that we've had, and national championships in college and hockey, baseball, and football, we rank up there with some of the bigger cities in the nation.
Well, I remember that Phillies-Pirates rivalry from when I was a kid because my father was a visiting professor at Duquesne University in the late 70s, and we went to some Phillies-Pirates games at the old Three Rivers Stadium. This is before the new one, of course. And it was a scene, that is for sure. But the reason I bring up the Pittsburgh sports scene, before we talk about the work that you did with the Washington Wild Things, the work that you do at your studio features a lot of the major professional sports teams in Pittsburgh. Your artwork has been featured on ticket stubs. It's been featured at the ballparks. Certainly, you've painted some famous athletes. How did you get involved with sports artwork in Pittsburgh in particular?
Well, Paul, I tell people, I brag the fact that I really never had a job, and I don't know if that's good or bad. But as a small child growing up in the 60s and 70s, I go back to the Forbes Field days with the Pirates and Pitt Stadium with the Steelers. I started to create artwork on T-shirts as a small child, and I'd paint. And if my very first T-shirt was Joe Namath.
Wow.
Years later, when I actually got this opportunity to meet Joe Namath, when I did the Western Pennsylvania Pennsylvania Quarterbacks Club, I had spent the afternoon with Joe, and I talked to him about making these T-shirts. Joe's all about the money, right? So he says, well, tell me about the T-shirt. I said, you were my first paying job, Joe. I was probably 13 years old, and I painted you on a T-shirt. And he said, what'd you sell it for? I said, $5. He said, man, I love it. I think he wanted his cut, but he's a really cool guy. I mean, my wife fell in love with him. But so, and then obviously we had the iconic Roberto Clemente, which I'm still, I'm good friends with the family, and I'm still painting, his portraiture and his keeping his memory alive. I'm working on a piece called From Pittsburgh to Puerto Rico. Which I was inspired to. This last spring, my wife and I went to San Juan, and I became inspired to do this piece, which is, I think it's a really, really sharp piece. But you got the Terry Bradshaws. Franco Harris became a good friend. We were with him, up until the end. I did the Immaculate Reception, tribute to the Immaculate Reception, which Franco signed the originals. It was very successful, and he unfortunately passed away right in the midst of all that. So I actually did the last project with Franco.
Well, so you've worked at the highest level of sports in Pittsburgh with all of these, sports heroes, and you mentioned obviously Roberto Clemente, who is not just a sports hero, but a cultural hero.
Right. Right. Everything. He checks all the boxes.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, no doubt. And so, but then the flip side of this coin is, you created this logo for this minor league baseball team, the Washington Wild Things, at a time when minor league baseball branding was not what it is now. This is before, the minor league baseball as a business really took off in the way that it has, since then. First question, I guess, is just how did you get involved with creating a logo for a minor league baseball team after doing all of this work with, the major professional sports teams?
Well, I was fortunate to be very, very, very close friends with the ownership. And they, at the time, very good friends of mine, decided to purchase this minor league team, which was going to move out of Washington, PA. Unless they built a facility for them to play in. So when my friends approached me about, we didn't even have a name as of yet, and they were throwing some things around, and the Wild Thing name stuck. It was kind of a cool, no one's ever used that. They showed up at my house, my studio, and they threw a pair of sunglasses on the table, and they said, "Can you design a logo?" Branding around sunglasses, a pair of sunglasses. So I thought that's kind of cool, So I started with some, color swatches and whatnot, and just prior to that, we had gone to, right after 9/11, we went to the Pirate game, very first Pirate game back from 9/11. The Pirates were playing the Mets, and I had my middle daughter, who was about 2 years old at the time. She was with us, and I snapped a couple pictures of her in the stands with her mouth open, screaming and yelling, and she had this hair all, wildly flying off the side of her head and whatnot. So I'm looking at this picture in my kitchen one day, and I'm, in the process of doing the logo for the Wild Things, and I looked and I said, "My God, John is the Wild Thing." I said, "She's the Wild Thing." It's exactly what, and if you compare the two pictures of her with her curls flipping out and her mouth, wide open, all I did was put sunglasses on her and a ball cap, and turned her into the Washington Wild Thing. And it's funny. She goes to, she'll be dating her boyfriends or whatever. She says, "I'm the Wild Thing." Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I'm the Wild Thing.
Well, the question obviously that we came into this episode with was, what kind of animal is the Washington Wild Thing? I was not expecting the answer to be, the Wild Thing is your daughter as a child at a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball game.
Yes, she is. That's her. She's the Wild Thing. Everybody says, is it a bear? Is it some woodland creature, whatever? But I thought, the Wild Thing always had a personality unto itself. I mean, I was friends. I knew a lot of the mascots here in town, like the pirate parrot, and Iceberg, the penguin, and whatnot. And again, going back to where do you reference, where do you get your ideas? The very first logo, or the very first T-shirt design that I did of the Wild Thing was him stretched out throwing a baseball. His left hand and mitt are out in front of him, and he's the arms cocked back. And that was a picture that was taken from Roberto Clemente's rookie picture of Roberto Clemente in 1955, 54, and I turned that into the Wild Thing, which appeared on billboards. We had a lot of fun with it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Having fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, go do something else.
True in sports and in life, I would say.
And in life, right? Correct.
Yeah.
Now, I have to ask you, were you tempted at all to make this logo yellow and black to fit in with the Pittsburgh landscape there?
No. So I wanted, we obviously used the black, and they wanted red, and I wanted a purple. So I tell them it's periwinkle. So I had to convince them, because they wanted red, black, and blue. So I had to convince them that this periwinkle was not purple, but blue. It was which if you sell periwinkle, it is kind of like a bluish shade. So it was listed as, Wild Thing colors: red, black, and periwinkle. Nobody knew what periwinkle was, but that was the actual initial colors of the Wild Things, and it was different. It was different than any other team colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted. I'm not a big proponent of black and gold, black and gold, black and gold, black and gold, black and gold.
Yeah, certainly understood. Before I let you go, I did want to ask one more question about this brand that you created. It was created, as we said, at a time when minor league baseball teams were not necessarily doing a lot of this. It kind of pushed the envelope, having a unique team identity, having this sort of wacky character. You see so much more of that now. But why is it, do you think, that this brand stood out at the time? And then why, do you think it has stood the test of time since then?
Well, it's obviously over 20 years, and they're still they can't find anything better. And to be quite honest, we've even had our logo copied by some of the Frontier League teams. Now, obviously changing their mascot branding, but using some of our designs. And I even pointed it out, to our ownership. And I guess the Frontier League's not the Major League Baseball. It's not like you're going to have all these attorneys getting involved and saying you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a fun league. It's not MLB, but and another on the other side of the coin, MLB is not the Frontier League, not the Wild Things.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun with the earlier seasons. It was called Falcone Field back then.
In addition to the logo itself, you did some other art-based work for the team?
Correct. I completed 3 murals, 9, 10-foot murals that adorn some of the luxury boxes in the stadium, plus all the merchandising was primarily all mine during the first, I want to say, 10 years. It was all, the baby Wild Thing, Wild Thing on a motorcycle, baseball with an attitude. We came up with that. And, Wild Thing as a weightlifter. So we made him all had all different images of the Wild Thing.
Well, it's a really fun logo, and I absolutely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast and chat about it. Dino, where can people find the work that you're doing online?
It's Dino Guarino. If you just look up Dino Guarino, Dino Guarino Galleries, and my website's always needing updated. But that's because I'll be putting some new things on there this year. I'd rather spend my time in a studio painting than working on my website.
Absolutely, and that website will be in the show notes. Dino, thanks again. This has been a lot of fun.
Paul, thank you for this call this morning. I enjoyed it.
Baseball by Design listeners worldwide, it is my honor to introduce to you the official Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent, musical enthusiast, and national anthem extraordinaire, Ranger Amy Burnett.
All right, well, as that intro from the inimitable Patrick Larson tells us, Ranger Amy is here on the podcast.
In the house.
Oh, no. Ranger Amy, Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy.
Yeah.
I have asked you onto this podcast to solve a mystery because...
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. So you have seen these logos here. You have seen what we're looking at here. This is the Washington Wild Things, based in Washington, Pennsylvania. And my question for you, I have asked both of our previous guests who should know what animal the Wild Thing is. So you've not heard those interviews yet. So you don't know what their answer to this question was. Let me just tell you, it remains a mystery to me what animal we are dealing with here. So I wanted to get your wildlife expertise based on the fact that this is a team in Western Pennsylvania, and we've got this creature here. I've got both of the logos that I am familiar with. The W with the Wild Thing head wearing some sunglasses. The sunglasses, the arms of the sunglasses disappear into some pretty thick fur there. And then another logo where it's just the upper half of the Wild Thing's body. He is wearing a baseball glove and throwing a baseball. In my mind, I don't want to steer you down a particular path here. In my mind, he looks a little bit like Michael J. Fox in Teen Wolf.
No, yeah, he kind of does. Oh.
Or Jason Bateman in Teen Wolf too. Was it Jason Bateman who was in Teen Wolf too?
Kind of does look like that.
So,
well, you said you weren't going to steer me wrong, and now I'm second guessing my opinion.
oh, you think maybe he's a wolf or even a werewolf?
Oh,
The Washington Wild Things werewolves?
Oh,
That would be pretty good.
I was all right. So you asked me what I think I was going with something. I was going to go with a bear, either a bear or a mountain lion. But he's a little too shaggy for a mountain lion. Like he's the color of the mountain lion, but I think he's kind of like his. But black bears can be all different colors.
Okay.
It can be cinnamon, and this is like a cinnamon bear. And he's got like the shaggy hair right around his ears and on his chin. So a mountain lion has like a ruff, but not hair on his chin, and this guy has, or girl.
Cinnamon Bear would
on
be a
his chin.
great name
Cinnamon
for an exotic dancer, except bear would be B-A-R-E. Cinnamon Bear.
That'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
Stripper name, Cinnamon Bear.
Exotic dancer. Let's try to keep it, let's try.
You can edit that in post.
All right, so let's
go
look
back.
at some of these identifying characteristics here. First of all, he just looking at the head, his ears are kind of rounded. He's got kind of round ears.
Yeah.
And he's got tufts of hair on his cheeks.
That's why I'm saying bear more than wolf.
Okay.
Because wolves kind of have pointy ears. This one has kind of rounded ears like a bear.
Okay.
But they're fairly small.
All right.
So,
He's got a black nose, looks a little bit like a dog's nose, maybe.
I'm thinking more like a bear's nose.
Oh, that looks like a bear's nose.
But you could have, some kind of he's got a good sniffer. That's for sure.
Okay.
He's got a prominent sniffer. And he has some little spots, which indicate that he has some whiskers. So he is using those whiskers for probably some sensory input.
Okay.
That's important.
Yeah.
But overall, he's the most important thing when you're trying to decide, like, if you've got a mystery animal, you can tell whether or not an animal is a predator or prey right off the bat.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You're looking at teeth.
No.
Oh, darn it.
Eyes.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We can't see his eyes. He's wearing sunglasses.
I know, but they're on the front of his head. And that's all you need to know.
Oh, okay.
Animal, so eyes in front,
Okay.
animals that hunt. Eyes on the side, animals that hide.
Oh,
That's how you know that this is a predator.
yeah, a little mnemonic device.
Yeah.
So eyes on the front, animals that hunt.
Eyes in front, animals that hunt. Eyes
Okay.
on the side, animals that hide.
Ah,
Yeah, so this
okay.
wild thing is a predator.
so he's definitely a predator.
He's a predator.
That doesn't help us in the wolf versus bear debate.
It does not, because both of them are predators.
Yeah.
This one has only 4 teeth.
Okay.
So I would say that he is a young thing
Okay.
because his teeth haven't come in all the way yet.
Okay.
Either that or he's Irish and he was in a bar fight
Aha, very good.
and
Okay.
he got it knocked.
Got his teeth knocked out.
But I'm thinking that, yeah, he's a young one. His teeth are just coming in, and his adult teeth, he only has 4 of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's holding a baseball.
Yep.
His fingers, he's got 4 fingers.
And he has claws,
He's
which
got claws.
kind of go along with the bear or a wolf, both.
Oh. Or a Simpsons character.
The Simpsons character. He's got
Yeah.
4 little claws. But when it comes to bears have a lot more ability to use their claws for like raking into like pulling apart trees to get at like a bee's nest. They love honey because like Winnie the Pooh. We
Yeah.
all know about that.
Right.
And so they actually like rip things apart. They rip into logs, they rip into trees with those claws, and they use them more than say wolves do.
Okay.
So as a baseball player, being a bear rather than a wolf would be advantageous. He'd have more control over the ball.
You appear to have eliminated the notion of big cat right away.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna keep that option open, but
Okay.
I think I'm eliminating wolf, but I'm bringing the cat back because he does have smallish ears.
Mm.
So kind of a shaggy wild cat.
Okay.
I mean, it could be a lion, but there aren't any lions in Western Pennsylvania.
No.
But because what makes me think that this is not a mountain lion is that there are, you're more likely to see a black bear in Western Pennsylvania than you are a mountain lion.
All right.
Black bears are so common in Pennsylvania that they're actually on the menu. People hunt them and eat them.
Okay. Well, so would you like to live in a world of limitless possibilities where this wild thing, you don't know the answer to what he is? Or would you like me to tell you what I learned from Christine Blaine and
Tell me,
Dino
tell me,
Guarino?
tell me. Yes.
Christine tells me that the wild thing is a wild thing. He is an indeterminate animal. And then Dino Guarino, the artist, the Pittsburgh-based artist who we just heard from on this episode, tells me that the wild thing is based on a picture of his little girl, his daughter, when she was little. And in this photograph, her hair is sort of flying out like crazy. And he adorably based this character, this indeterminate animal character, on his daughter.
Oh, that's great.
So it will remain a mystery. If this were a real animal of some sort, it will remain a mystery what it actually is.
Well, that kind of explains the unkempt hair or fur.
That's right. That's the wild hair.
And the and the teeth haven't come in all the way yet.
Right. It's got the 4 sharp teeth.
This is a wild thing, but it's still young. But it still is a formidable predator.
Yeah.
I mean, that she's probably likes to eat hamburgers because she's a meat eater.
Ranger Amy, thanks very much.
This was fun.
This was fun. Tell people where they can find you on Instagram.
You always do that part.
You're at the Real Ranger Amy on Instagram, and you're also these days on both Threads and Blue Sky.
I am.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers, the weekly segment in which designer Dan Simon, who has accomplished so much in the world of minor league baseball, takes a break from his busy schedule to bring us a trivia question. Dan, good morning. Hello. How are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. How are you on this, at least for me, beautiful morning?
Well, when this episode drops, Dan, we will have had 2 games in the Major League Baseball season already. The Japan series will have already happened, and we will be right on the cusp of opening day for the rest of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, well, it's wild to think that baseball season is here again.
Finally. It feels like this offseason went on forever. It also feels like we need to talk about the Washington Wild Things, an indeterminate animal. We don't know what this animal is. There's a lot of theories, and we just talked to Ranger Amy about what it might be. But we have a Studio Simon Stumper. I assume you have a Studio Simon Stumper regarding teams that play in cities in Pennsylvania that might be confused for states in the Pacific Northwest, maybe teams named for indeterminate animals, alliterative teams named for Maurice Sendak books. I don't know. I have all sorts of ideas about where you might go here, but let's hear it. What do you have for us this week for a Studio Simon Stumper?
Well, I was going to start off by saying that haven't you learned already that it's folly to try to predict what my stumper will be about? But you did mention something that we're going to talk about. Let's talk about what we think of when we hear the words Wild Thing. Let's start with you. Give me a thing or things that you think of with Wild Thing.
Mitch Williams.
Okay. I would imagine most of your listeners know who Mitch Williams is, but maybe for 5th grade Will's sake, you want to tell everybody who Mitch Williams is?
He was way before 5th grade Will's time. Mitch Williams was a relief pitcher in Major League Baseball who very notably pitched in the 1993 World Series as a member of the Philadelphia Philly. I don't know if he's an answer to a trivia question because I wonder, this name is probably pretty well known out there in the world. He gave up the home run to Joe Carter that ended the 1993 World Series, a memory we had to live with for 2 years because there was no 1994 World Series. And then the Phillies would not make it back to the World Series for 15 years when they won it all in 2008. My memory of Mitch Williams as a baseball player, in addition to just sort of his wild hair and his wild wind-up and delivery as a pitcher, but back in the days when pitchers batted, he had a walk-off hit in an extra innings game that went, I'll forget the specifics of this, but it went like 18, 19 innings. It ended at like 3 a.m. And Phillies broadcaster Harry Kalas called him Mitchy Poo. I think Harry Kalas was just delirious after a 19-inning game. But that game, I had been working that summer at the CVS pharmacy. I was a high school student, and it was a summer job. I came home from CVS. I worked the shift that went until 11:30, midnight, whatever. And I came home, and that game was on. It was like the 10th or the 11th inning. So I thought, I'm going to sit down with a sandwich here and watch the end of this game. And I got to watch a full Major League Baseball game. I got to watch 9 innings of baseball with a walk-off hit by Mitch, the Wild Thing Williams, who got his name. That nickname, Wild Thing, obviously came from the movie Major League with Charlie Sheen's character named Wild Thing, who, it turns out, was the inspiration for the Wild Things nickname with the Washington Wild Things.
Okay. Well, then that means the inspiration for the Washington Wild Things name was not the song by the Troggs
No.
from 1966, a rock staple, although maybe indirectly it was.
Right.
Or the song by Tone Loc, Wild Thing,
Ah,
the 1989 song that peaked at #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. There was a movie, Wild Things, in 1998, an erotic thriller starring Matt Dillon, Kevin Bacon, Nev Campbell, and Denise Richards, whose name I will come back to.
oh,
There was the aforementioned 1963 children's picture book by Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Are. And maybe most notably, there was the 1989 movie Major League that starred, amongst others, Denise Richards' former husband, Charlie Sheen, as Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn.
Major League also starred my buddy Howard, who has been a guest on 2 episodes of the Baseball by Design podcast. He's a naturalist for Ware Nature Center in Milwaukee. He was an extra. He was a hot dog vendor in the stands during a scene, and he tells a very funny story about going and sitting down and having lunch in the lunch room, wherever the actors would go. And he ended up sitting at a table with Charlie Sheen and some of Charlie Sheen's lady friends. And it was a formative experience for my friend Howard.
Well, and we're going to be talking about
Howard April.
Charlie Sheen's character, Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn. And our studio Simon Stumper today asks, what was Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn's jersey number? Was it A, 00, B, 13, or C, 99?
I was afraid you were going to go 99 because that was Mitch Williams' jersey number. So let's see here. I had 00 really jumped out at me, but Mitch Williams was number 99, and it makes me wonder if that was part of why they called him Wild Thing. I'm going to discount 13. I don't think it was 13. 00 is picking at the back of my brain. If I get this wrong, I'm going to regret not going with 00. But I am going to go, because it was Mitch Williams' number 99, I'm going to go 99.
Okay. You are correct, sir. But
Oh,
99 was not his original number with the Phillies. He was originally number 28. Now, I do not know for sure when he switched jersey numbers, but I can tell you some chronology. The movie, as I mentioned, Major League, came out in 1989. It was not until 1993, 4 years later, that Mitch Williams gave up his infamous gopher ball to Joe Carter. My understanding about why Mitch Williams was called Wild Thing is because he was wild. You know, you as a fan might remember, every time he came into a game, another hair turned gray on every fan's head. I would imagine he embraced being called Wild Thing and maybe changed his number because that's what Ricky Wild Thing Vaughn wore in the movie.
unfortunately, it couldn't just be fixed by giving Mitch Williams some glasses, as it was fixed for Wild Thing in the movie. Spoiler alert: they fix Wild Thing's wildness with glasses. Dan, this whole conversation is filling me with anxiety now. I'm flashing back to my teen years watching Mitch Williams blow leads for those early 90s Phillies.
But he was a fairly colorful character. I look back on that as just like one of the neat things that happened in baseball. Just his existence and him giving up that home run kind of sums up his career. But he was a decent pitcher.
Oh yeah, he was a good closer for the Phillies, and also a good guy. Like, I remember that he was widely regarded as being a decent human being, and always whenever he blew a lead, he always owned up to it. And, and there were sort of famous moments years after the Joe Carter home run where Mitch Williams and Joe Carter appeared in public together. And the thing that I will always say about Mitch Williams is he gave us a lot of heartache as a pitcher, but he was definitely a good guy after the fact, which also, I really wanted Joe Carter to be a villain as well. Like I wanted him to be like a bad guy who I could root against and wish bad things on. But he's also a really good guy, and so that's a problem too for me. As a Philadelphia sports fan, I wanted to dislike Joe Carter, but it turns out he is eminently likable, and I can't.
Well, speaking of really good guys, you're a really good guy, Paul. You're also an excellent podcast host. Thank you for having me on for this week's Stumper, and I'll see you next Stump Day.
Dan, I'm glad you're my friend, and I look forward to experiencing some baseball with you, including a new Major League Baseball park for me in 2025. Happy baseball season to you. Thank you for more than 100 Stumpers. Thanks for being my pal, and I look forward to sharing another baseball season with you. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.